Hey everyone, welcome back to Aussie and the Pro. And this fight episode is going to be a recap on McGregor versus Cowboy.
So as we witnessed on Saturday night, we were correct. We were right on our prediction. Happened a little bit quicker than we anticipated, but I'm going to ask TJ to break the fight down.
So really what you seen was McGregor came out hot, just like we predicted. Cerrone being the slow starter, it sounded like a pretty basic game plan. And McGregor came out hard with a straight left. He missed, and then Cerrone kind of almost ducked into a shot. But McGregor was prepared for that clearly, because as soon as Cerrone changed levels, he sprawled his hips out very quickly, and then that's when they clinched up. And from there, I think we've seen something interesting, something we really haven't seen much of in the UFC at all. He started using some pretty devastating shoulder strikes that we came to find out actually led to a broken nose and orbital bone for Cerrone. So that he's been medically suspended for 6 months.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because they were showing videos the other day too of Conor actually training those, right?
Yeah.
And like the way he jumped off with that left hand kind of reminded me of how Masvidal jumped off with his knee. And you see both of these guys drilling these techniques in practice. So
yeah, practice makes perfect, 100%. And then after the shoulder strikes, you see they kind of break off for a second. Cerrone threw a kick that just kind of glanced off McGregor's arms, and then McGregor followed up with his own left power kick, and it landed right on Cerrone's jaw. And from there, you could see Cerrone was stunned, and McGregor, like the great finisher he's proven to be in the past, followed up with an amazing sequence that led to the stoppage. And Herb Dean did an amazing job by letting the fight go on a good amount to where there was no controversy. And then McGregor was the winner in I think about 40-something seconds.
Yeah, I mean, we had the pre-fight kind of predictions, and we predicted that Conor was going to win in that talk. We talked about Conor's focus, and I think it was evident that he put in the time and the work this time, right? Like you could tell he came in more composed, more focused, and we didn't really get to see, we didn't get to see him for too long in the ring, but he was definitely the more focused guy, and he had to win this fight. There's no way he could lose this fight.
Yeah.
Like if he lost this fight, it ruins his brand. It ruins. I know he has his proper whiskey business. Everything that's Conor McGregor and his aura of being a champion is down the drain had he lost this fight. So I don't think he could have lost this fight. He had no choice.
Absolutely, I feel like them giving him Cerrone was the perfect matchup for him in a perfect world, seeing as Cerrone was coming off 2 losses. But that being said, it was also a high-risk fight, whereas if McGregor somehow lost, like you said, his brand, his image would have been completely destroyed. And it was a very high-risk fight for McGregor, but he looked very good. He looked sharp. He came in with some tools we haven't seen before, and there really couldn't have been a more flawless performance on his end.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Before the fight, a lot of analysts and other fighters were recommending that Donald Cerrone start hot. He usually is a slow starter. He gets going in rounds 2 and 3. Eddie Alvarez was on Ariel Helwani talking about how him and some other fighters actually spar like a full round before they even do their walkout. So I think something like that, maybe Donald Cerrone as a lesson learned, could do something of that nature in the locker room before he does the walkout, because he does always seem kind of hesitant and slow to start. So, and Conor just came out running basically.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. It was Eddie Alvarez and Dominic Cruz, so two former world champions, that suggested maybe, and this was before the fight. Even they suggested maybe Cerrone get that full round of sparring in, get a hard round in, just to get the slowness out of the way, to get that laxative approach just gone and out of the way, like you said. So as you're getting into that ring, that's actually going to be round 2, 3, and 4. Because Cerrone's never really proven to have a cardio issue or anything like that. No. So that would have been a very good idea for him to do, especially considering all the talks of his nerves in the past. I just discovered for myself him trying to almost get out of the Leon Edwards fight in the back room, which I think for someone with so many fights as Donald Cerrone and so many high level fights, it's pretty pretty amazing to hear. Honestly, it's you really just never know what's going on inside the mental of a fighter.
Yeah, and I mean, we always hear about the mental toughness and people's psychology, and a lot of these athletes now are talking to sports psychologists, right? They're visualizing these things. Donald Cerrone throws up every time before he fights, right? So this is a factor when it comes to Donald Cerrone, and you'd imagine if maybe that wasn't a factor, what type of fighter would Donald Cerrone be, right? So
yeah, the mental aspect is like I said, or like many people have said, it's 99% mental, and it's a very small portion of it's actually physical. Of course, the actual work is physical and everything about that, but you could be the perfect athlete, but if you go in there with no mental, you're going to be very, very pretty much useless in there. And you see that too, athletes that might not be the greatest fighters show up there with toughness, and they pull it off, they make things happen. So that being said, we're going to go over some matchups we believe that would suit Conor McGregor and Donald Cerrone next. So first off, we got McGregor. We got
the most obvious.
The most obvious, I feel like, would be Khabib. They've obviously fought already. It didn't go McGregor's way. It was pretty much a mauling for Khabib most of the fight. McGregor did win round 3. Of course, his fans will never let us forget that. And yeah. So, but as far as a money fight, that's definitely the route people want him to go.
It's funny because you're right too. That's the obvious fight for Dana White, and Dana White's actually even said Conor wants his belt back. They're asking, what if Ferguson win? What if Khabib wins? And his response was Conor wants his belt back. So it seems like they're at the mercy of Conor McGregor. I actually think the fight to make is Masvidal.
Yeah.
Even Khabib. I think Masvidal makes more sense. They're two guys that are drawing right now, and it would be a big money fight, and it would be an exciting fight. I think a lot of Khabib fans and other, like, Khabib's already destroyed him, right?
Yeah.
I think in the future, if 2 or 3 fights out, I think it's a fight that can make a little bit more sense. But at this time, I mean, besides the dollars and cents of it and how much money they would make, I don't think it's the right fight to make for the fans.
Yeah, especially like you said, what Masvidal is coming off 3 hot knockouts or 3 hot finishes, I should say, and McGregor coming off a win like that, especially with their fighting styles and how devastating each fighter is. That's even with all the way down to their trash talk too. McGregor's a great person on the mic. Masvidal is almost just as witty with some of his comebacks and statements.
They both wear robes, Versace robes.
They both do some. They're both very charismatic fighters. They both put a lot of you can see they put a lot of heart and soul into their work, and they really believe in what they do. And the most important thing is they back it up. That they back up everything they say. And I feel like that the matchup would be very interesting for the fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the media would have a field day with that, right? You could have these guys show up to 5 or 6 cities across the U.S. or the world,
100%.
And I mean they would sell the fight. They're both really good at trash talk, and I would actually that would be an awesome fight. It would be an awesome pre-fight, and I think it's a fight that makes the most sense for Conor. But we had some other interesting fights for Conor as well. You brought up one name that I thought would be really interesting to see, and probably not on a lot of people's radars.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't been talking about him since his loss to Kamaru Usman, but Colby Covington would be, in my opinion, one of the most interesting fight lead-ups for Conor McGregor. The way both these guys talk trash, the way both of them seem to not be affected by someone else's trash talk, like it's almost like everything someone says to them is kind of just bounced off, and they don't really they're just so focused on what shit they have to say that nothing really gets to them. You don't really see any emotion in their trash talk. It all looks like a show, and it's all extremely entertaining in that sense.
And they both can fight.
And it's 2 super altering styles. We seen a different style out of Colby in his last fight with Usman. It was no groundwork at all compared to his usual fights, and both southpaws. Obviously, Conor McGregor would be the smaller fighter in that fight, but it's just both guys come and bring it. It would be the most interesting matchup, and I feel like it's the biggest question mark matchup too, because I feel it's a fight where you really just don't know. You just really don't know.
Yeah. Were there any other opponents for Conor that we could foresee in that?
What a lot of people have been talking about, which I think is like not really, in my opinion, not too interesting is Kamaru Usman himself for the belt, because I don't believe that Donald Cerrone is. Another matchup is Kamaru Usman, but for me it's not that interesting just because I feel like Donald Cerrone doesn't really warrant anyone a title shot at 170. But and I also feel like no, I mean beating Donald Cerrone doesn't warrant a title shot at 170. Yeah. But and Kamaru Usman's style is completely, it's like a Khabib but much bigger, much stronger. So I feel like a matchup between him and Conor obviously isn't probably in Conor's best interest. And Usman's shown pretty great striking on the feet, especially in his last fight against Covington. Yeah,
I think that's a fair assessment, absolutely. And I think, you know, if Conor's next fight was Masvidal and he beats Masvidal, and he, you know, I think at that point even where he's taken out two welterweights, and I think it's a time where you can, you know, kind of justify and you know, make sense of that fight. This time it doesn't really make that much sense too, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that is a fight for the future that could happen, possibly.
And then the last one we had on the list was Nate Diaz, number 3. Obviously, they're 1-1 against each other. Even the second fight was close. Personally, for me, not too interested in that. Like I said, I don't know. I don't really feel like Diaz has the star power he did at one point. He does have his diehard fans, of course, and obviously any McGregor fight is going to be big, and I feel like they'd be able to sell. I just don't see interest in that fight because there's not a title talk afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, with a guy like Nate Diaz, I mean, I just don't see him making the run for the belt, and that's what excites me.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, like when it comes to a lot of these journeymen and all these, you know, there's a lot of exciting fights, but in terms of exciting fights, and you know, I think as much as like Conor's always in the kind of in that spot where he could contend or fight for the title, right? Whereas Nate Diaz, I mean, we don't expect that from him at all. So, I mean, it would be a good fight for the fans, but I wouldn't be too interested in it personally.
Yeah, and last but not least on the list, it's actually some people's favorite matchup that I've been seeing online is Justin Gaethje and Conor McGregor. I feel like that would be an amazing matchup. Gaethje doesn't really seem like someone who could mentally break in the pre-fight. No. Seems like someone that comes to fight every time.
Yeah, that would be fireworks. I mean, somebody's getting knocked out for sure. I would say somebody's getting knocked out in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
I mean, both those guys bring it, and Justin Gaethje's been on a tear. He's been hunting down, you know, his last 3 opponents in the ring. I mean, that fight at the lightweight division is the most exciting fight for me, definitely.
And what I believe is what makes that fight so interesting is that both of them have a great stand-up game, but they have very contrasting styles when it comes to that. You have the very sleek and methodical Conor McGregor, who likes to pot shot, kind of get the one shots in. He's not a very big combo puncher. And then you have Justin Gaethje, who just walks forward and throws bombs. So
and a great wrestler too.
Yeah, and a great wrestler on top of that. So that's what makes him so dangerous on the feet, and that's what's made him so dangerous. And that's why people want to see this guy fight for the belt too, against Khabib eventually, because he possesses a skill set really no other lightweight has at the moment.
He deserves it too, right? He's like just his
3 knockout streak.
3 knockout streak, and I mean, he hasn't fought. He lost to Poirier. He hasn't fought Ferguson yet. He hasn't fought Conor, and he hasn't fought Khabib. But I mean, one of those 3 guys is next, really, for Gaethje.
Yeah, he deserves it, like you said.